right, so that gets us into this area of safety. One of the things I said we would always do in our classes is we would start with safety first, principles of remediation. Now let's talk about safety. And if you give me this next slide there, we're going to talk about the three types of chemical exposures. Now, this applies across the board, right? You've got incidental exposure environments, direct exposure environments, and prolonged exposure environments. So let's define those. Next slide. All right, so incidental is where there's a likelihood of chemical contact, but it's minimal and occasional, and mists may occur. A perfect example is a construction site, right? Lots of air volume, lots of lots of air volume for anything such as the chemistry itself or fumes potentially coming from that to dissipate. Okay, that is our incidental exposure environment. Next slide. The next one is direct exposure. This is where chemical exposure is minimal, but is expected. An occasional splash or spray may occur. So now once you've got a dried in environment, let's say, right, you've got windows, doors, sheathing, all those sorts of things in place, you're more confined. So the likelihood of exposure increases, and therefore you've got a direct exposure environment. Next slide. And then finally, a prolonged exposure environment. This is where chemical contact may be continuous or may be expected to be continuous, and chemical overspray or dripping is certain, right? In that environment, like a crawl space environment, that would be a perfect definition of a prolonged exposure environment, right? It's potential, right? It doesn't have to be. We could be using in these environments a lot of tools with like our BTM sprayer, for example, that allow you to stay away from the chemistries that are being used and to mitigate these risks. But we're just talking about the environments and the definition of them themselves. Okay, next slide. So then that brings us to, well, if we're just talking about coatings and sealants today, what kind of protection do I need? Do you need to remain safe in all of these environments? And unlike most of the time where I might be breaking out Chemex 1s and Chemex 2s and things like that, today the only suit that we're going to be talking about is the microporous suit. Now, we happen to be a distributor of Lakeland suits, so I'm going to use this one as an example. And I want to just go through a few things that differentiate this suit from other suits, right? Now, the first thing is microporous is always going to be a material that's breathable. So for environments that are warm, you're going to be thankful to be using this suit. But because coatings and sealants tend to land on and fuse to a surface as compared to penetrating through them, we can use this suit when we're working in all three exposure environments. One thing I do want to show you, if you would turn to the next slide, is a superior version. And I oftentimes in these classes, I rip these things up so that people kind of get the idea of some of the downsides of these materials too. But one thing that everyone, I think, should be using are push locks, right? As you can probably see on your screen, push locks are a sleeve and collar system that attach your gloves to your sleeves. So whether you're doing demolition and pulling insulation or things like that, or you're just using chemistry, right? Now you've got a great interface there instead of wasting tape and time and all these sorts of things to allow you to get right to it and to not have to worry about anything getting up your sleeve. Next slide. All right, that brings us to gloves. Think of these gloves as, what is the task at hand? Literally, if you're doing a 15, 20-minute task, you may just want a task glove, which everybody's used to, right? A little 4mm glove just for tasks, right? You're doing something in the shop or something like that. Just keep your hands clean. But when you start getting into needing to actually articulate and grab tools and really work with those tools, you don't want something that's going to rip. You also don't want to have put a work glove over that, which is typical because you lose dexterity. The solution is go to an 11mm or a 15mm glove. An 11mm will most likely last most people all day. A 15mm may last you all week. All you have to do is decon those at the end so that you've got at least the 15mm, so you've got clean gloves each and every day and reissue for the week. Next slide. that also brings us to respiration. Okay. Now, when we're moving over from cleaning chemicals and things like peroxides and chlorinated peroxide and chlorine dioxides that we're normally talking about on the remediation side of things, now when we're in coatings and sealants, we're talking about an organic vapor acid gas cartridge. Okay. This is filter 60923, and this is a combo cartridge, meaning that it also comes with a P100 to filter out any particulates. So that is the recommended cartridge if you're using coatings and sealants. Next slide. And then you've got two options. You could either go with goggles. These are our UVEX goggles right here that are breathable and anti-fog, in a half-face respirator with the same cartridge. Or next slide, as you would imagine, also going with a full-face respirator is an option. You can go either way. Again, we're not worried about mucous membrane issues and things like that, like if we were working with an oxidizer or something. So it's a little more lax here, a little more comfortable when you are installing passive moisture controls. Next slide. All right, so that brings us to some support guides that would be really helpful for most people. And if you're a customer of ours, you know that we will print and laminate these for free. You can go on our website right now and look up our various service guides and our, where are they at? Selection guides, service and selection guides. You put that in the keyword search, you're going to find these, and you can order these for all your trucks, vans, whatever it might be. Maybe you want to put these in your production room. We'll laminate these. They're single-sided. They'll come to you so you can install those in your vehicles and very quickly marry up the product with the problem and have a solution for your guys in the field or for training purposes.